The hamlet of Cooling has two claims to fame. The first, as so often in these parts, is its castle, built in the late 14th century to repel the French. Although today it's inland, Cooling Castle was a coastal fortress when it was built by Sir John Oldcastle. Eras in history have etched themselves into the story of Rochester. It is as the home to many of Dickens' works that the city is perhaps best known today, summed up by the Pickwick Papers jingle, who first introduced us to Kent. Rochester, he said, fine place, glorious pile, frowning walls, tottering arches, dark nooks, crumbling staircases, old cathedral too. Dating back to the Belgic tribes, it was the Romans who truly put Rochester on the map. When their reign finally ended, the Saxons moved in, adding their own fortifications to those of the Romans. It was here King Alfred built England's first navy, and here the Ethelbert established a base for Christianity, before the Normans made much of Rochester, building the castle and cathedral side by side. Another echo of Kent's long history, from Iron Age man to modern holidaymaker, lies along the coast at Reculver, where the Two Sisters, all that remains of a 1,200-year-old church and a landmark for sailors from Saxon times to the present day, stand aloof from a neighboring caravan park. On these cliff tops are signs of Iron Age settlements, of Romans and Saxons as well as Normans, who enlarged the Saxon church and dedicated it to St. Mary. It is a land that can vary from wonderful to inhospitable, from season to season, or even day to day. Richborough was of great strategic importance to the Romans, an island fortress in the Watson Channel, cutting off Thanet from the mainland. As a port and administrative centre, it was the arrival point for the legions, spreading the rule of Rome to this outpost of the empire. Today, ruins are all that is left, a reminder that even the mightiest of empires one day must fall. Led by St. Aidan, established a priory in 635 to bring Christianity to northern England. Legend has it that a vision of St. Aidan brought St. Cuthbert, then a Scottish shepherd, to the island. On his death, St. Cuthbert was buried on Lindisfarne. But when the body was to be moved to a more appropriate resting place 11 years later, there was no sign of decomposition. His remains became a sacred relic, later moved to Durham, where a magnificent cathedral was established to avoid Viking raids on the island. Also taken from the island, although only to the British Museum, were the richly decorated Lindisfarne Gospels, some of the finest examples of Celtic art. Facsimiles of these remain on the island. Ideal for fortification was Bamburgh, almost in centuries past cut off from the land, that the Normans followed the Saxons there, and the 11th century castle was later used as the headquarters of Henry VI during the Wars of the Roses, when it was badly damaged by cannon fire. It went into decline after this, until magnificently rebuilt in the 18th and 19th centuries by the Armstrong family, who still own it today. But a tangible reminder of the Saxons is the 8th century well, hacked through 150 feet of rock to give the fortress its own water supply. Much of Bamburgh Castle is open to the public except in winter, but throughout the year, its proud stance on its hilltop perch is a constant reminder of Sir Walter Scott's view of it in Marmion. Thy tower-proud Bamburgh manted they there, King Ida's castle huge and square. From its tall rock look grimly down, and on the swelling ocean frown. But while the ancient royal town of Bamburgh lives in the shadow of the castle, it has its own claim to fame with one of the best-known heroines in British history, Grace Darling. In 1838, the teenage Grace and her father, Dunstanburgh Castle, standing on 11 acres of rocky headland, 100 feet above the sea. Even today, there is no road to the ruins, adding to the magnificence and, at times, the eerie bleakness of Dunstanburgh. The castle lasted intact for only 150 years after its construction in 1313, an unlucky year perhaps. As an important stronghold in the Wars of the Roses, this largest of Northumberland's castles changed hands between the two sides no less than 5 times, and was laid to siege by Margaret of Anjou, the Queen of Henry VI. The artillery damage from these battles was never repaired. Today, the basalt cliffs below the castle and the nearby sand dunes are home to thousands of seabirds, from Manx shearwaters to fulmars and terns. The town of Warkworth, like so many on this coastline, is dominated by its castle, once the home of the Percy family, the most notable of whom, Henry, was immortalized as Harry Hotspur by Shakespeare in Henry IV. In a way, it's returning the compliment, for it was in Warkworth Castle that the Percys proclaimed Henry Bolingbroke King Henry IV in 1399. The River Coquet is crossed here by a fortified bridge, testament to the town's bloody past. Back in the 12th century, Scottish raiders slaughtered 300 people who had sought refuge from one of their forays south of the border. Today, the only people who seek refuge are sailors, for whom Warkworth Harbour and the marina approaching nearby Amble provide a perfect haven from the often stormy North Sea. To most people, coal mining conjures up pictures of grimy towns dominated not by historic castles, but by spoil heaps. This, however, is the northernmost point of the Northumberland coalfield. Amble, at the end of a 7-mile stretch of beautiful sandy beach that is Druridge Bay, made its name as a coal port. Because the coal seams are so near the surface, coal is often washed ashore in winter storms, providing free fuel for those hardy enough to brave the elements to retrieve it. To the north of Druridge Bay, just offshore, is Coquet Island, once notorious for its they never had to withstand the more earthly attractions of 20th century Whitley Bay. Alongside the Priory is Tynemouth Castle, an imposing guardian of the estuary of the northeast's great river, the Tyne. Built in the 13th and 14th centuries, the castle is on the headland where many previous fortifications were raised, mainly to repel Viking invaders, who often struck with some success, but each time the fortifications were rebuilt. The importance of Tynemouth to the Saxons can be judged by the fact that several kings of Northumbria are buried here. foot of the sweeping moors to the north, broken by the valley of Bilsdale. The town grew to prominence when the Normans built a castle on the rocky outcrop to the southwest of the town. But the original builders probably wouldn't appreciate Dorothy Wordsworth's observations of its ruins, where defensive ditches have grown up into soft green cradles. Those ruins give much insight into what a magnificent building it must have been when it was finished at the end of the 11th century, when it housed 140 monks and 500 lay brethren. By the time of the dissolution in 1538, Rievaulx was already in decline, but although it was allowed to fall into ruin, the stone was never taken for other buildings, nor the abbey itself turned into a country home. Above the abbey, Rievaulx Terrace, owned by the National Trust, curves gently over a hanging wood to give inspiring views of the ruins. The old Benedictine Abbey on the cliff tops was built on the site of the one founded by St. Hilda, and is surrounded by legions of stories and legends, right up to the dissolution, when the bells were put on a ship bound for London. The ship sank on a calm day, in sight of the abbey, and it is said that on some nights the sacred bells toll from beneath the waves. The harbour is still a commercial venture, but very different from the centuries of whaling, during which time Whitby claimed no less than 3,000 whales, along with polar bears, walruses, seals, and, it said, 41 unicorns, by Simon and Garfunkel. The castle dates back to the Normans, but its most dramatic battle probably came during the Civil War, when after the Battle of Marston Moor, Scarborough was besieged by 3,000 Scots troops loyal to Cromwell. It saw action as late as 1914, when 2 German battleships shelled the town and flattened an empty barracks built alongside the castle walls.